Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Today's topic is integrating third-party manufacturing execution system with Dynamics 365 for supply chain management. My name is Brad, and I'll be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this session through Teams live events, and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. This session is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. When you join this event, your name, email address, and/or phone number may be viewable by other session participants in the attendee list. By joining, you're agreeing to this experience. The recording will be available on the TechTalk's Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. If you have questions for the presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout the event and during the Q&A segment near the end. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Sachin Gandhi, Principal Solutions Architect, and Vlad Grozman, Software Engineer. Sachin, over to you.
Thanks, Brad. Hello, everyone. Today we are here to talk about how we integrate third-party MES systems with Dynamics 365 for supply chain management. So if we sort of look at our customer base, we have different industries, distribution, a lot of manufacturing from automotive to pharmaceutical to food to consumer goods. And what we kind of see is the manufacturing can be really simple, where it's just about reporting, time and sort of communicating what production orders are available to execute on. And in some cases, it could be very advanced, where the manufacturing execution system is actually fully integrated with the assembly line or with machinery, or is very specific to that industry. So when we run into those kind of scenarios, there is obviously a consideration that needs to be made whether to use the MES system that is available inside Dynamics 365 or use either an existing MES system that's already in place or replace that with a more industry-specific or machine-integrated MES out there. And there are a lot of ISVs out there that specialize in various types of MES systems that serve different industries. So the challenge that we typically run into with our customers in this scenario is, okay, should we integrate? Should we use the out-of-the-box functionality in Dynamics 365? And if we have to integrate, then what is the integration complexity? What is the effort in terms of doing that integration? What is the time required? And then once all of that is developed, then what's the ongoing maintenance cost and upkeep? And also, as the integration messages are flowing through, if there is any troubleshooting needed, how to kind of do that, right? So, and we have seen, different ISVs kind of solve this problem in different ways. Sometimes they customize Dynamics 365. Sometimes they have a lot of middleware to try to be able to kind of build this integration on. And that's kind of the problem statement we looked at and sort of say, how can we simplify it for our ISVs, our customers, and our partners to build this integration with MES systems. So if we are kind of looking at our options here, then the first option, where no customization is needed and everything out of the box in D365 is the production flow execution interface. We have an excellent functionality built in terms of communicating to the shop floor what production orders are available to be executed on, for the shop floor workers to clock in, start a production order, report progress on it, report as finished, report material consumption, and end those production orders. And it can be done through this touch-friendly interface that we have now enabled. If you want to know more about this out-of-the-box functionality, about this production flow execution interface, then I also included a link at the end of the deck to one of our tech talks that we did previously, specifically on the production floor execution interface. So please take a look at that. But if we kind of run into the scenario where out-of-the-box functionality is not really the best option, then we must integrate with another MES system. Instead of customizing everything and building the APIs in D365, we have now enabled out-of-the-box framework and APIs that can help you easily integrate your manufacturing execution system with D365. Here's a link which you can open up and you can take a look at the full documentation that we have published. But kind of looking at a little bit of the mechanisms around integration. Integrations could be to and from FNO, where data is either flowing in or out of finance and operations. It could be a synchronous type of integration or an asynchronous type of integration. And if we kind of look at then sort of what are the different types that are supported in finance and operation. One is business event, where if a state changes of a production order in D365, to say production order goes from a started state to a release state, we can raise a business event that then an external application can subscribe to in an asynchronous way and basically react to that business event. And then the other mechanism we have is our data entities, which we can call to either import or export data, or call over OData, or call over the data management framework APIs also. And then we also have our traditional web services that we can call in, and we can build a web service in D365 and have it called from the external application. What we have done here is kind of a little bit unique in terms of messages. They're kind of similar to web services, but they act more in an asynchronous way, where a message comes in through finance and operation, it's queued up, and then it's kind of asynchronously processed inside of finance and operation. And that's what we have added as part of this framework. And that's what you can leverage in terms of integrating your MES system. Business events, again, like I said, lightweight event notifications that you can send to any external application that can subscribe to it. Could be very simple HTTP endpoint, or you can go through via service bus, or an event creator, or event hub, or block storage. Here's a link to the documentation on the same. And then data entities, we have lots of data entities that are available out of the box. So if you're looking at product information, bills of material, route, we have entities for all of that already. So all you have to basically do is call the data entity over REST API or data in synchronous way, or you can also basically go and define a project in D365 in which you can add then the data entities for which you need the data, and basically call the data management framework API to basically either import or export that data. So that's a tried and tested mechanism in terms of the importing and exporting data. The thing with data entities is mostly exchange of data, not really kind of a business logic that you can activate unless you can go and write action on the OData, custom action on the OData call. So it's mostly data, not so much logic, but in some cases in the MES scenario, we might not just need to go and create a route cut journal, we might also need to go and post that journal or a bomb journal. So that's where we need to exchange data, but we also need to take the business action inside of finance and operation. And that's what the messages framework that we have enabled helps us do that. So the messages would are not just able to kind of exchange data, but also invoke logic in finance and operations. So any external app can call into that API, and based on that API, the right action will be taken. Messages are processed asynchronously, like I said earlier. We will take the message in, we will queue it up, and then we will basically have a bad job running that, processes that message in the necessary order. And then if there are, any messages that have any kind of problem getting processed, we have a dashboard to view those messages, retry processing those messages, and even edit those messages. So if we need to troubleshoot anything, there is an inbuilt dashboard for that. The few APIs that we're supporting right now as part of this first release is basically messages that will enable you to start and end the production order, report as finished, consume materials or your bump consumption, post your bump consumption journal, and then report time and labor. So basically post your report journal. So if we kind of compare these mechanisms, right, business events are basically an event triggering something outside of FNL. So it's mostly going out of FNL. It's mostly asynchronous. Instant notification. We don't have to wait for schedule integration to run. It's as it happens, it will be delivered. And then they're lightweight. They can include a lot of data, but the payload is small for each business unit. So that could be one of the limitations. And then examples like here, we have production order release business event, or when an alert is generated in FNO that can trigger a business event. There are a lot of boxes you can go read documentation, business events, and the different scenarios you can use them for. Data entities, like I said, it will be both bidirectional import and export of data, can be done synchronously or asynchronously. And then there are a lot of data entities that are really available out of the box. So if you're just using one of the box available entities, then it's kind of an effortless way of reading and writing over a REST API. And you can also call the data management framework API if you're kind of trying to exchange data in bulk. Again, like you said earlier, data entities generally mostly exchange of data, not triggering of a business process or logic in D365. And if you need to kind of do something, your custom field, something like that, or maybe trigger some logic, you may need to go and then extend those data entities. And we have data entities, like 2,000 plus data entities out of the box, so we can release products. So if your MES system needs to know about details about a product, you can look at the release product V2 entity. Or if you want to know about the customer, we can look at the customer entity. And if you want to look at what is the on-hand inventory available in FNO, we can look at the inventory warehouse inventory status on hand entity as well. Messages are coming into FNO. So they're kind of data coming into FNO, and they're asynchronous. These will invoke logic, business logic in D365. So in our MES scenario, we could start a production order or stop a production order, or report as finished. Queuing is flexible with ordering, and then there's a dashboard for troubleshooting. So those are some of the advantages. And then currently the limitation is that out of the box we only enabled it for this MES scenario for production orders. But other messages could be implemented by customers and partners and extended on. And then examples of this is like start production order, report as finished. So to enable this functionality, you have to be at least on 10.0.23. That's the version we have first released this in. And you will also have to enable the manufacturing execution system integration feature in feature management. And to integrate and authenticate your integration messages, you will have to go and create a map ID and secret in your Azure Active Directory, and then set that up in D365. So the authentication occurs properly based on the app ID and secret. If you look at the integration events and data flow that this framework enables us for. So the first one is release production order. So if we're kind of looking at from a procure to pay stream, we will run our master planning. Typically, master planning will generate your planned production orders, will form those production orders. Those form production orders will either be in an estimated state and then at some point, those production orders will be then released to the production floor to go and execute on. So that's the event that we have enabled, business event we have enabled when production order is released. The MES system can look for that business event for release of production order, and that's when the MES system will know what is FNO making available for the shop floor to execute on. And once it receives that information about the production order that it should go and execute on, the MES system may need reference data, like data about the item, the bill of material, the route, and for that, the MES system can either make an OData call or call the data entity and data management framework API to get the item information, the BOM information, and the route information, or any other kind of information that it may need from FNO. So now at this point, the MES system has all the information that it can actually go and start executing on the production order. So when it actually goes and starts executing on the production order, it can send a message to FNO. And that will make sure that the MES system and FNO is in sync, and the production order status is in both the systems kind of match and stay in sync, and we know when exactly that production order started. Also, as production progresses and we start producing finished goods, the MES system can send a set of messages again to report production. This is sort of similar to posting your report as finished journal, and it can send item, product, dimensions, quantity, all kinds of information there that's needed. And as the MES system is consuming the raw material based on your crushing principle, if it's manual, the MES system can also basically keep us updated on what raw material it's consuming and start posting the bump consumption journal as well. Similarly, as each operation is done in the MES can report time on each operation and basically post the route card journal as well. And once the MES system completes the production order, the MES system can send a message to end the production order in D365. So that's the flow that we have enabled using this framework, and hopefully this makes integrating MES systems much easier, where our customers, partners, and ISVs don't have to go and code these APIs themselves in D365 and manage them over time. This is something now available out of the box. Here is a screenshot of the monitoring and troubleshooting page in D365. So here you can see the message type, and messages are getting queued in here. And you can select these messages and kind of look at the details of that message. And then you can process the message, or, create the journal and try to post it manually, or, do any editing that you need to do to that data to get it posted. So that's the monitoring screen that we have built to, troubleshoot if there's something that's getting stuck. So without further delay, I will hand over to my colleague Vlad here for giving you a quick demo of this new functionality.
Yes, thank you very much, Sachin. Hello, everyone. And yeah, Sachin has pretty much told you everything you need to know about what messages and our other integration features can do. And I'm just here to show you how really easy they are to use. And don't just take my word for it. We also showed it, previewed it to a few partners, and they've had the exact same feedback. So I want to show just quickly how messages work in practice, but also show a bit about the other two integration functionalities that Sachin talked about, and also a bit about the setup. I won't go into that too much because all of the sample code and demo will be available to all of you on GitHub, and it also includes step-by-step instructions for all the configuration I have done for it, starting with just the Dynamics development environment, setting up all of the authentication and the configuration, everything. So just quickly, all I've had to do was create an app registration here in Azure, and there I just have an application ID and a secret. And once I have that, I can just go into here into Azure Active Directory applications in Dynamics, map that client ID to a user ID. I also need to change the default company of the user that I will be using. In addition to this, I have also set up business events. They're very simple. We have this business event catalog where you can select some business events and activate them. You also need to create an endpoint, which I have done here. And as Sachin mentioned, creating an endpoint can be as simple as defining an HTTP URL that we post the events to, or you can go in a bit more, a bit better if you use some Azure technologies, because there, for example, you can queue up messages in case your recipient goes down, better resilience. And the way to set this up is also very simple. Here I have created a service bus. It's called a service bus namespace, and then from here I just need the name of the service bus. I need a connection string, which I get by clicking here. I've also created a key vault that contains this connection string, and I've also created another application registration which has access to this key vault. And all of this information I've just input into here. If I click new and start Azure Service Bus Queue, then we'll just input all the data here, and there you have your endpoints. So without further ado, let's see what we can do. This first app that I create, I just input that client app ID here and the secrets in here, and that's really all I need to do to be able to authenticate. This is the Dynamics URL, and there, if we go into the actual demo code, what I'm doing here is I use an auth helper to get an authentication header using the information I put into this client configuration file, and then I just have a few examples here. So let's see what happens when we run this. Okay. It can usually take a minute at startup just to authenticate and start everything up. Oh, that went fast. So here we can see there is one line that I basically need to write to retrieve all the information we'll need in the external MES system about a certain production order. So we have this production order headers entity, and as Sachin mentioned, we have many thousands of entities out of the box, basically all kinds of data that you might want out of Dynamics. And in addition, all of that data is linked between each other. So here, right, expand production order bomb lines, released product v2, production order route jobs. That means that besides just getting a production order header, I also get all the other information that I might need for processing that production order. So here I'm retrieving production order with number P000173, and let's see what I'm getting out of that. So here is the production order. Here we have the number, the name, a bunch of other information. And we also have these things that I have expanded. So for example, we have these route jobs. This is information about everything that goes into producing this, what resources used for a job, the ID, how many hours it's supposed to take. Similarly, we have the bomb lines. This is the raw materials that goes into producing this production order. And of course, as you expect, we have all the dimensions where you would find this. We have the name of the bomb. We have the number of the item that will be consumed, and so on. And the final thing that I've expanded here is released product v2. So let's see what we're seeing here. And this is, of course, the final product that we are supposed to produce in this production order. So let's see what kind of information we have about that. Yeah, here this D003 is the product that we're supposed to produce in this production order. And this all through these 1, 2, 3 lines of code. Now, as Sachin also mentioned, the entities are not limited to just retrieving data. We can also update data. So here we're retrieving another production order, 311, and then we are just adding a 1 at the end of its name. Yep, and that's how quickly that worked. And now we can see that this 311 now suddenly has a 1 after its name. So it's really no more difficult than that. And of course, there are a bunch of other ways of using entities, which are more in bulk, but this is really the basic of it. And we have an auto-generated library that allows you to just write code like this with link queries. So let's continue beyond production orders. What else we can look at? So here, for example, we have the released product directly. We just retrieve information about D001, and here we're going the other way. We would expand the production order headers. So here, instead of looking what we're supposed to produce or what raw materials go into production order, we're looking at a released product, and instead looking at all the production orders for producing that. Let's see. Yes, and here we can see that we actually have 55 different production orders for producing this D001 item. It's our main demo item, so that's why there's so many of them. And final examples, we can look at sales orders as well. And this is exactly the same kind of code. We have an entity for sales order headers, and here we're just expanding all the lines. So the sales order header naturally contains, for example, the address that you want to deliver it to, and so on. And while the individual sales order lines contain the actual things that you want to sell and their item number and where you can find them in the warehouse, and so on and so on. And here, once again, we have an example where we can update things. So, for example, you have an external MES system, you are producing a production order, you can see that you might have some delays. You might want to update the expected delivery date on the related sales order. And of course, you can find the sales order from the production order and vice versa. So that's really how easy you can work with data entities. Yeah, but before we get to the state where we want to retrieve information about the production order, we might want to actually retrieve the business, or we might want to actually receive the business event that a production order has been released. And this is also very simple. So this code above is if you want to have an HTTP endpoint. And this is how simple it is to listen to a service bus. Here is the connection string that we could retrieve from Azure. We also show that within that service bus, we create a queue, and that's just giving it a name. Specify that queue name here. We specify a handler for receiving a business event or error handling, and then we just start processing. And the message, the business event handler here is also very simple. We decode it from JSON. Here we're only interested in the type of business event, and then we write out the body. So let's see what happens when we run this. Yep, right now we don't have any business events in queue, but let's see what happens if, for example, we want to create a new production order, D001. Created it, then we to estimate it. And then we go ahead and release it. Sorry, my laptop is covering my screen a bit. There we release it. There it is released. And now, within a few minutes, hopefully, we should have an event here. There we go. We have a business event. And what we can see here is we can see the type of business event. We can see a bit of background information we don't need. We can see the company, the number of the production order, the date when it was released, and the type of the production order. I think it's standard or batch. So we can see there's not that much information in the business event itself, and that's also how they are supposed to work. If you need further information, which you probably do about this production order, then you use entities for that. And similarly, you can also get a business event, for example, if your messages were to fail. Here, for example, I have a start production order queued up for production order 210. But, oh no, production order 210 is already reported as finished, so it doesn't make much sense to start it. And there it's already failed twice, and I've set it up to a retry 3 times. So when you process it again, it should fail again. Let's have a look. So normally, of course, you would have a batch job running all of these, but I've disabled that just for demonstration purposes. And here we see, of course, that production status report is finished, does not allow start. And now this message moved to the fail state. And if we look here, we got a business event. This is an alert event. And the way you set up alerts is just going through any form and click options, create a custom alert. And there you can choose any kind of settings you want when you want the alert to be created. It's basically for any kind of data change. So here we have set it that whenever a message goes into the fail state, we send this alert, and you see it's an alert event. We have a bunch of things configured. These alerts can, for example, be sent as an email. They can also be sent in the notification center for a certain Dynamics user. And we can also send a business event, which is what's happening here. So we see that the table message state and the field name state has changed. Therefore, we got this business event. Under key value 1, we see the production order that this message relates to, and on key value 2, we see the timestamp of that. And we also get a deep link here, which if you display to a user and they click it, they would just go there directly to this form with the correct message already pre-selected. And we can also have the message details. This is the suggested name of that link. So that's really how simple it is with business events. Now let's move on to the actual messages. So what's happening in the messages is perhaps the simplest of all these things. We once again use Alt Helper to get an authentication header based on the app information we put in client configuration. Then we have the URL to the sys message service, which we just appended to the Dynamics URL. And here we create the message and send it. And due to how it works internally, we need to basically JSON encode it twice. We have an outer message that specifies the company ID, queue name, the type of the message. This is just to determine where the message will go. And then we have an internal message content, which is this. And for a production order start message, the content is simple. You specify the production order number. And you can, of course, also specify, for example, the date when you start this production order, just so you have everything synced up. Of course, for other message types, such as picking laser bomb or report finished, you have a lot more data in this message. You have a bunch of lines, for example. If you report multiple items finished or consume multiple items, you can do that as part of the same message. So let's see what happens when we run this. Yep, that's it. Message posted. And now if we refresh here, we have a new message here. Right now it's in the queued state. Normally we would have a batch job that would, every few minutes, depending on how you set it up, would pick this up and process that message. And if we were to process now, that would start this production order. We have a few more useful things on this screen. So we have a log for what happened with the with the message. Here it is. So we can click log here, and we'll get the actual error message, because you would normally click process here. You would have a batch job doing that. You can also look at the contents of the message. Here on the start production order, there's not much content. It shows all of the available fields. You can see the raw content. For other messages, there's a bit more information. And here you can, for example, see a table of all the lines. You also see that there is a whole bunch of parameters you can specify here to customize it to your heart's content. But the important thing here is that the item you want to pick is M001, and you're consuming 3 of these items. You can, of course, sort and search here as you want. And the final useful thing that I wanted to show is that when a message has failed, you probably need to do something about it. Here for the route card, it failed for a bit more complicated reason. So let's see what happens if we click log here and click message details. So here you see that we forgot something on this route card message. Operation number must be specified, cost category per time is not specified, resource number is not specified. Here something was wrong with the message. It could also be that something is wrong with the state of your system, such as you're trying to consume inventory that you don't have, which you might want to fix elsewhere in Dynamics. But in this case, the issue is with the message itself. What we can do in this case is this button, create journal and post manually. And this is basically about editing the message. But instead of having a business user try to edit the JSON message manually, what we do is we use internal Dynamics functionality to create this route card journal according to what is in the message. And then we can actually use this regular familiar interface to specify exactly what we need to do. So for example, we forgot the operation number. So we want operation number 10. There's probably some other operation numbers defined here. And we need to define all the types and quantities that we forgot here. And then we can just click post as we would in a regular Dynamics flow. Oh, right, that's because I entered 10 here. Yep, I think that's really all I had to show. That's what there is to the messages. And I hope that you agree with me that it doesn't get much simpler than this. So with that, back to you, Sachin.
Thanks, Vlad. Sorry, it took me to turn the mute off. So thanks for the excellent demo. We have been busy kind of working with a couple of our ISVs to actually help them use this framework to integrate their MES with Dynamics 365. So one of the ISVs that we have been working on is Octane. Octane specializes in additive manufacturing. When you're kind of doing 3D printing and kind of have to nest your parts in a 3D sort of way, and they really have some really good AI there. So we have one customer that had this need, and we sort of partnered with Octane and helped them kind of leverage this framework, and they were able to build the integration very, very quickly using this. And then similarly, we are working with Aegis Software with their Factory Logic MES, and they were also able to utilize this framework in terms of getting their integration done in a faster way. So I know there were some questions around what MES You will have a multitude of MES that suit your industry and your needs. If out-of-the-box MES is not enough, so if you try to integrate those MES, you can also basically follow the same pattern now. We'll have to do less work because we have enabled these APIs. This slide has the links to various documentation. So basically the dot site where we have kind of documented the APIs that Vlad just kind of walked you through. We also have this TechTalk on the production flow execution interface. So if you want to use the optimized functionality, that's where you need to go. Another blog about this framework. And last one is basically a link to a GitHub site where all the code that Vlad just walked you through is available as a sample code for you to basically take it. And if you try to build it, you can kind of use that as a starting point and then revise it from there. So those are the resources you can go look at if you're interested in this. With that, I think I'm kind of done with my presentation, and we're happy to take more questions. I know there has been an active Q&A going simultaneously, but if you have any specific question, we can take them up and provide any answers. So please feel free to just type away your questions in the Q&A panel. Also, I guess based on the questions that I was reading and the first version of the TechTalk we did yesterday, I guess some questions around extensibility. So I guess we just want to answer that yes, there are ways to extend and create new message types, but if you run across scenarios where something you can extend, then please go ahead and log an extensibility request through Lifecycle Services. That way we know what scenario you're trying to enable, and then we can help you in terms of figuring out what's the best way for you to enable that scenario, and if there is a extension point that we need to add for you. But right now, I think our engineering team's trying to keep a close eye on this and keep things a little tight. But as we learn more, we will probably open this up for more extensibility going forward.
Thanks, Sachin. On a related question that was also on the chat, what if they would like to create other messages? Not extend the existing ones, but create new messages.
So, Lennart or Vlad?
I can take that one. Yes, that should be possible by extending the message type and the message queue. So we are working on a blog where we walk through how to do this. It's a bit out of the Q&A here to try and explain it, but the short answer is yes, you should be able to create your own messages.
Thanks, Lennart. And also similar on extending, there's a question that is asking, is there any plan to extend this message framework to other areas?
That's a good question. I'm hesitant to answer yes or no. So the answer will be, we will use this message framework when it makes sense to enable the business scenarios that we are delivering in upcoming releases. So this is another framework for us to integrate in the Cloud Edge project. This framework is used very heavily.
So I guess if any customers have or people logged in today have any feedback in terms of what other scenarios you would like to see a similar framework or similar APIs being available, please share that feedback. You can type it in the chat right now or share with us offline. But we are going to learn and see where else we can make integration easier with Dynamics.
Mm-hmm. And as you were saying, Lennart, it's a framework that is used by the Cloud and Edge. There was a question before asking, is it also working with the scale units?
So the message framework in general is definitely working for the scale units. However, the messages that are implemented here for the MES third-party integration, they are not all supported in the same release as what has been demonstrating here.
Exactly. That's what I answered as well.
Okay.
And if you're interested, yeah, I answered to all the questions so far in the chat. So if you're interested as well, if you have any customer, if you're a partner and have a customer that would like to use the scale units and this MES third-party integration, please let us know. We're interested in knowing about it.
Yeah, I see one last question here around can the framework be used in on-prem implementations? And if I'm right here, right, this is an API that we have enabled, and I think there shouldn't be a problem calling it even if you're on-prem. Is that right, Lennart?
No, that shouldn't. Like the message processing that we are building on top on here is just X++ code utilizing the batch framework.
Right.
And then the external communication that Vlad's shown is simply consuming this code and calling the APIs.
So the simple answer is yes, it will also work if you have an on-prem deployment.
Correct. For messages and for entities, it should work in exactly the same way. I can't guarantee that 100% for business events. So as we saw, there are a few different ways of delivering these business events, and not all might work in on-premise, but at the very least, you should be able to use the HTTPS endpoint for business events on-premise as well.
Now that we have talked on the framework, let's pass to a couple of new questions on the functionality. There's a question asking, can the pick list consumption message auto-reconcile on-hand inventory between MES and D365?
So can the pick list, the consumption message auto-reconcile on-hand inventory, right? So the pick list from the MES system will be sending us a message to say what the MES is consuming. And then we'll be posting that against D365 as a BOM consumption journal. So it basically will work like how you're posting a BOM consumption journal. If, let's say, you are picking more items than actually available in the on-hand inventory, then that processing probably will fail, and you will have to troubleshoot that and sort of adjust the inventory to be able to kind of get that posted. But we don't have sort of, I'm not sure how the auto reconcile will come into picture there, because all the message we'll be doing is basically posting the BOM consumption journal.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And adding to that, when the message is processed, it's actually using the same logic as Dynamics would do when posting the consumption. So in case the consumption would fail, let's say you're picking 5 pieces of a component and there's actually not 5 pieces in inventory, then you would be given the same error message as you would when posting it from the application. So then in that case, you can have a user, your production responsible, for example, going and finding out what happened with those pieces, if they were actually just not registered as inventory, or what happened with those, and manually edit the message if needed.
Yeah. Okay, the next question is whom I think somebody's asking for contacts with Octane and Aegis. So obviously they are independent ISVs, so you can go to their website and get in contact and get in touch with them. But if you want us to help, you can drop me an offline message, and I will happy to connect you with them. Okay,
Thanks, Sachin. Last one is, adding another scenario, EDI for sales order, PLM systems.
Yeah, I think that's good feedback. A lot of the PLM system integrations I have seen is more kind of done through data entities today. But we can think of exactly what messages would help in the PLM scenario. I think the EDI one is also interesting, which we need to kind of look at the whole EDI side of things, sales order, shipments, and all of that. And typically, what we see customers use, like data masons, as the EDI provider there. So yeah, I mean, out of the box, I think there is a lot of room in terms of improving the EDI story, but we can look at if messages can help there.
Mm-hmm. Adding on PLM as well, in general, the integration between PLM and ERP is master data that doesn't necessarily need some processing as such, as in this case that the messages have a manufacturing meaning, and then you have to post journals. For those kind of data integrations, in general, you don't need the queuing capabilities that is the strongest point of this framework. You can handle any spike of messages coming from your MES. In the case that you have many reported as finished, for example, then you can just handle those in the ERP. But if you have a scenario that you have, if you have more ideas on the PLM, please drop us a message and we'll be happy to discuss with you. On functionality as well, then we have another question. Can it be sent back from the MES a consumption of an alternative or new item comparing with the BOM lines? And in general, the integration tries to find the transaction of the corresponding BOM lines when registering the BOM consumption.
So I think if the scenario is that somehow the MES is consuming an alternate item instead of what was listed on the bill of material, then I think we should be able to still use messages and post that, because you are basically posting a BOM consumption journal and you're saying I'm using a different item. I think that should work. I don't know if anybody else has a comment on that.
Yeah, that is correct. That you can consume anything basically through these messages, and yes, I believe that when you're consuming something that is in the BOM, then it matches those transactions.
Yes, in general, it is as well the MES that controls what is happening on the shop floor. So in case there's any last-minute changes, any material availability in the shop floor, it will always be MES controlling this. And then it has to be able to report this back into ERP of what was actually consumed. So yes, the messages are able to do so.
The thing that next one is, will those error messages also be visible in MES system somehow? So I think that's what Vlad tried to show in the demo, is that let's say you send a message to D365 MES system, and then that fails. So on that troubleshooting form, you could set up an alert to say when a message fails, generate an alert, and then hook up a business event on that alert. And then your MES system could get notified if a message fails. And then the MES system can take the subsequent action from there on. But the alert framework will be the feedback loop to the MES in case the message fails.
Yeah, I'm not 100% if the error message itself will be part of that business events. We'll need to look into that if that's possible to set up somehow. But at the very least, you can still set it up to, for example, send an email when that happens. So it's possible to find that out.
I think there's a suggestion on having a similar set of APIs on quality system. I think that makes sense to me. Because if you have a different software that you're using for managing your quality orders, then we can have some APIs that can enable the two systems to stay in sync. So that's a good suggestion, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. Then there's another one that is asking, does the message for reporting as finished and or start manage any flashing principle setup? For example, bomb consumption set at the end?
Yes, the messages have a field for setting the flashing principles, so if you don't want to use the one that is configured by default.
And then as well for functionality, do you also plan to expose some options to start, finish jobs through OData actions on the production order header data entity?
I believe since we now have the messages to do this, I'm not aware of any specific plans to enable such functionality. If you have a scenario where you believe this will be a better fit than the messaging framework, then please let us know. And once again, we'll be happy to discuss your options.
I think the thinking through that a little bit, right? If we just created an action to go and take the subsequent or run the subsequent logic in D365 and done that through adding an action on the OData, then that will run synchronously. So your call to FNO will be synchronous, and you won't operate the queuing mechanism. So that, I guess, will be the difference. Otherwise, in both cases, we are basically, sending a JSON message or a message to D365. But with the messages framework, you get the benefit of queuing. So if you have spikes in your load, FNO can still kind of process it and not truly impacted by the spike. We have seen in other implementations where there's a lot of OData calls and spikes in OData calls that creates problems, and then we have some throttling on the OData calls where you might get a 429 code back if you are calling too many OData calls at the same time. So I feel like the messages framework kind of gives you that queuing mechanism, which is an added benefit.
Exactly. And, just abstracting ourselves from the technology and, start and finish jobs. Let me add on the usual scenario that we've seen so far is that when having both MES and ERP, in general, MES is the one that is actually controlling the shop floor. It's actually controlling the specific jobs and activities to be performed in the production facility. So in general, it has much more detailed control of the job management. In most of the cases, this information is not needed to be sent to the ERP. ERP is business-wise enough information, having just the state on the production order, like start, finish, and then quantities reported as finished or scrapped, because that is the information that is going to be used farther on from ERP to be able to change inventory on hand, to be able to know if the parts have been produced and then can be shipped. But as such, ERP in general does not need to have the specific job, start or finish.
Yeah. Thanks, Beatriz. I think we are coming close to the end of the hour, so I'd like to hand this over to Brad. Brad, please take it over.
Thank you. To all of our attendees out there, I've posted a link to a short survey in the Q&A panel. We'd like to get your feedback on today's session and to hear what you'd like to see in future events. Thank you for your participation there. As a reminder, the recording of today's session will be available on the TechTalk's Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. And finally, I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenters and audience for joining us today.